The twins arrange a blind date for their dad, only to unknowingly pick their own biological mother. Hi, my beautiful story family. Welcome to Mr. Peter Stories. Today, I'm not going to ask for likes, comments, or subscriptions. Why? Because I've realized something far more important. You. You're not just viewers. You're my family, my heart, my reason for pouring my soul into every story. You inspire me, lift me up, and give meaning to what I do. If I've ever let you down by focusing on the wrong things or drifting away from the heart of our connection, I'm truly sorry. That was never my intention. But here we are together, and I want you to know how much you matter to me. You're the heartbeat of this channel, the light that keeps me going, and the reason I strive to tell stories that resonate deep within our souls. So today, I just want to thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for being here, for listening, and for allowing me into your life. This story isn't just another video, it's a piece of my heart dedicated to you. Let's dive in together. The late afternoon sun painted golden streaks across the sleek hardwood floors of the Matthews townhouse in San Francisco's Pacific Heights neighborhood. Zayden and Cairo Matthews sat cross-legged on their bedroom floor, their identical hazel eyes fixed intently on the tablet screen between them. At 12 years old, the twins had already mastered the art of secret-keeping, and this was their biggest operation yet. Their matching dimples deepened as they scrolled through dating profiles, the soft blue light of the tablet illuminating their determined expressions. Zayden, the older by 7 minutes and self-proclaimed leader of their schemes, ran a hand through his dark curls, a nervous habit he'd inherited from their father. Cairo, perpetually the more thoughtful twin, adjusted his round glasses with careful precision, a gesture that made him look uncannily like their dad during important video meetings. "Dad needs someone special," Zayden declared, his voice carrying that peculiar mix of childhood innocence and premature wisdom that only children who've had to grow up a little too fast possess. "Someone who'll make him laugh again like he used to." The memory of their father's genuine laughter hung between them like a precious photograph, faded but treasured. These days, Adrian Matthews' smiles, though frequent, carried a weight the twins were only beginning to understand. Cairo nodded solemnly, his fingers tracing invisible patterns on their custom-made, space-themed rug, a birthday gift from their father who encouraged their dreams of becoming astronauts. "Remember when he used to sing in the kitchen? Those weird 90s songs he loved so much." "Yeah, especially on Sunday mornings during pancake time," Zayden added, a hint of nostalgia creeping into his young voice. "He hasn't done that in forever." Their modern San Francisco townhouse, with its smart home features and panoramic views of the bay, felt too quiet these days, despite their father's best efforts to keep their lives filled with joy. Adrian, a successful software architect at one of Silicon Valley's most innovative companies, had thrown himself into single parenthood with the same determination he applied to his coding projects. The twins had spent weeks planning this moment. Their research was meticulous. They'd even created a spreadsheet, with help from their tech-savvy friend Phoenix, listing all the qualities their potential stepmother should have. The document, hidden in a folder labeled Math Homework, which they knew their father would never open, included categories like makes dad laugh, likes sci-fi movies, and won't mind twin chaos. "What about his profile?" Cairo mused, opening another tab on the tablet. "Are we sure it's good enough?" They'd carefully crafted their father's dating profile one night when he'd fallen asleep on the couch after a long day at work. Adrian's phone, unlocked by his sleeping fingerprint, the twins felt a little guilty about that part, had provided access to his best photos. They'd chosen pictures that showed him coaching their little league team, giving a presentation at a tech conference where he looked particularly impressive, and one candid shot of him laughing at the beach during their last family vacation. "The bio is perfect," Zayden assured his brother. "We made him sound fun but responsible, and we didn't lie much." Their father's dating profile read like a carefully curated story of a man who loved his work, cherished his family, and still believed in love despite life's complications. The twins had diplomatically omitted any mention of their existence in the initial profile, agreeing that this information was better revealed during actual conversations. The soft whir of their robot vacuum, which they'd named Wall-F, a family joke, provided background noise as they continued their mission. Outside their bedroom window, fog rolled in from the bay, wrapping their hilltop neighborhood in its characteristic mystical embrace. "Aunt Nova almost caught us yesterday," Cairo remembered, glancing nervously at their bedroom door. "She gave me that look. You know, the one where she knows we're up to something but can't prove it? Their Aunt Nova, their father's younger sister and self-appointed family guardian, had been instrumental in raising them after their mother left. She lived just a few blocks away and had an uncanny ability to sense when the twins were plotting something. Her protective instincts toward Adrian had only grown stronger over the years. "She's just worried about Dad," Zayden reasoned, though his expression suggested he shared his brother's concern about their aunt's potential interference. "Remember what happened with his last date?" Both boys winced at the memory. Their father's previous attempt at dating, encouraged by well-meaning colleagues, had ended with an awkward dinner where his date had declared she wasn't ready for an instant family. The twins had pretended not to notice how their dad had thrown himself into work projects for weeks afterward. A notification pinged on the tablet, making both boys jump. Their father's dating app had received several messages, and they leaned in eagerly to read them. Most were the usual greetings, but one profile caught their attention, a woman whose warm smile reminded them of someone, though neither could quite place who. "Wait!" Cairo said, grabbing his brother's wrist to stop the scrolling. "Look at her bio. She likes hiking and makes terrible puns. Dad would love that." The profile belonged to Luna Rivers, an environmental lawyer whose photos showed her at various national parks, always with a genuine smile that reached her eyes. There was something about her that seemed familiar, like a word on the tip of their tongues that they couldn't quite remember. "She went to Stanford, too," Zayden noted excitedly. "Dad always says Stanford people understand other Stanford people's weirdness." Just then, the sound of keys in the front door made them both freeze. With practiced efficiency, they closed the dating app, cleared the tablet's recent history, a trick Phoenix had taught them, and seamlessly transitioned to their backup activity, pretending to struggle with math homework. Adrian Matthews' footsteps echoed up the stairs, accompanied by the familiar sound of him humming absent-mindedly, a habit the twins had inherited. As their bedroom door swung open, both boys looked up with perfectly crafted expressions of innocent frustration. "Dad!" they chorused, holding up their math worksheets. "We need help with fractions!" Their father's tired face broke into a warm smile as he loosened his tie and set down his laptop bag. "Let me change first, and then we'll tackle those fractions together. Have you two been studying hard?" The twins shared a quick glance, their identical hazel eyes twinkling with shared secrets. "Oh yeah," Zayden answered, his dimples deepening. "We've been working on something really important." As their father disappeared into his room to change, Cairo quickly typed out a draft message to Luna Rivers, saving it for later review. Their plan was in motion, and though they didn't know it yet, they had just set in motion events that would change their family forever. The fog outside their window grew thicker, shrouding their neighborhood in a mysterious glow that seemed to mirror the intrigue of their secret mission. Unknown to the 12-year-old matchmakers, their carefully plotted scheme would soon lead them to discoveries they never could have anticipated, and truths that would reshape their understanding of family, love, and forgiveness. In their minds, they were simply trying to find their father's perfect match. They had no way of knowing that their quest would lead them right back to where their story began, to a woman who had left them long ago, whose absence had shaped their lives in ways they were only beginning to understand. As Adrian's voice called them down to dinner, the twins exchanged one last meaningful look. Operation Perfect Match was officially underway, and there was no turning back now. Chapter 2. The Mysterious Profile. The weekend arrived with San Francisco's characteristic morning fog, turning the view from the twins' bedroom window into a mystical landscape of floating buildings and muted sunlight. Zayden and Cairo had woken up early, their excitement making sleep impossible. Their father was at his Saturday morning workout class, a routine he'd started last year as part of what he called his self-improvement journey, giving them the perfect opportunity to further their matchmaking scheme. "Wait, stop scrolling," Cairo suddenly exclaimed, grabbing his brother's wrist with unexpected force. His glasses slipped slightly down his nose as he leaned closer to the tablet screen. "Look at her again." The profile of Luna Rivers filled the screen, and both boys felt that strange tug of recognition they couldn't quite place. In the morning light, her photos seemed to tell a deeper story. There she was, standing on a hiking trail in Muir Woods, sunlight filtering through the redwoods behind her. Another showed her at a climate change rally, passionate determination evident in her stance, as she held a cleverly worded sign about environmental protection. "She looks like someone," Zayden muttered, unconsciously touching the photo displayed on their nightstand, one of the few they had of their father in his younger years, back when he still wore his hair longer and smiled without reservation. Luna Rivers' profile was professionally crafted, but retained a warmth that felt genuine. Environmental lawyer with a focus on marine conservation. Stanford Law School graduate, class of 2013. Loves hiking, making terrible puns, and believes in second chances. Currently working on protecting the Pacific Coast's marine sanctuaries. What the twins didn't realize, as they studied her photos with intense concentration, was that Luna Rivers was actually Ariana Luna Matthews, their biological mother who had left them a decade ago. She had changed her name after the divorce, taking her middle name as her new identity and her maternal grandmother's maiden name as her surname. The decision had been part of her fresh start, a choice made when the weight of her decisions had felt too heavy to bear under her married name. "Look at her bio again," Cairo said, adjusting his glasses with careful precision, a habit he'd developed when deep in thought. She quotes Dad's favorite author in her profile. "The universe is made of stories, not atoms. What are the chances?" Zayden nodded enthusiastically, his curls bouncing with the movement. "And she works with Ocean Alliance. That's the organization Dad's company does pro bono tech work for. It's like the universe is giving us signs." The irony of their excitement was profound, though they couldn't know it. The connections they were discovering weren't cosmic coincidences, but breadcrumbs from a shared past, leading them unknowingly back to their own beginning. Their best friend Phoenix chose that moment to video call, his face appearing on their tablet screen in a split window. At 12, Phoenix Yang was already a coding prodigy, having inherited his mother's talent for technology. His family lived in the same building, making him the perfect accomplice for Operation Perfect Match. "Did you run the background check I showed you how to do?" Phoenix asked without preamble, his dark eyes serious behind his own pair of glasses. The twins had dubbed them the trio of nerds at school, wearing their matching spectacles like badges of honor. "Yes!" both twins answered simultaneously, a habit that still amused their friends even after years of friendship. "Everything checks out," Cairo continued, pulling up the notes they'd compiled. "She's really who she says she is, at least according to public records. Stanford Law graduation confirms, California Bar membership is current, and her environmental work is well documented. What their young detective work couldn't reveal was that Luna had carefully constructed this new identity over the years, building a reputation in environmental law that could stand independently of her past. Her professional achievements were real, but they told only half her story. Her social media is consistent too, Zayden added, switching to another tab. 10 years of posts about environmental causes, hiking adventures, and really bad jokes. Dad loves bad jokes. Phoenix's sister Ember suddenly appeared in the frame, her purple-streaked hair a stark contrast to her brother's conservative style. At 16, she had appointed herself the twins' honorary big sister and voice of reason, though her idea of reason often involved more mischief than their parents would have approved of. "Let me see her again," Ember requested, and the twins angled their tablet to show Luna's profile. For a moment, something flickered across Ember's expression, a flash of recognition quickly hidden. As one of the few people who had access to the Matthews' old photo albums, she had seen pictures of the twins' mother, but she chose to keep her suspicion to herself for now. "She seems perfect," Ember said carefully, watching the twins' eager faces. "Maybe too perfect. Sometimes when things line up this well—" "Don't be such a skeptic," Phoenix interrupted, though he shared his sister's concern. "The algorithm matched them for a reason." The twins exchanged glances, having one of their silent conversations that often unnerved their friends. They had learned early in life to read each other's smallest expressions, a skill born from shared experiences and secrets. "Should we tell Aunt Nova?" Cairo asked aloud, voicing the concern that had been nagging at them both. Their aunt had been their father's strongest support system since their mother left, helping to raise them while building her own successful tech startup. "Not yet," Zayden replied firmly, closing several tabs on their tablet. "You know how she gets weird about Dad dating. Remember last time? The last time hung in the air between them, an unpleasant memory they all shared. Their aunt had thoroughly investigated their father's previous date, a woman she'd met at a tech conference, and her protective instincts had created tension that ultimately contributed to the relationship's quick end. What they didn't know was that Nova had already caught a glimpse of Luna's profile. The previous evening, while borrowing the twins' tablet to order takeout, she had seen the dating app notification. The sight of Luna's photo had caused her to drop the tablet onto the couch, her hands shaking with recognition. Nova remembered all too well the day her former sister-in-law had walked away, leaving behind 2 confused toddlers and a devastated brother. In her own apartment, Nova now sat with her girlfriend River, debating whether to intervene. The cosmos seemed to have a cruel sense of humor, bringing Ariana, now Luna, back into their lives through the innocent matchmaking attempts of her own children. "They're going to find out eventually," River pointed out gently, watching Nova pace their living room. "Maybe it's better to guide them through it now?" Nova ran her hands through her short hair, a gesture reminiscent of her brother's nervous habits. "They're just starting to truly heal," she argued. "Adrian is finally finding his footing again, and now this—" Back in their bedroom, unaware of their aunt's turmoil, the twins were crafting the perfect first message to Luna. They had studied their father's writing style from his work emails and social media posts, attempting to capture his voice authentically. "Dear Luna," Zayden read aloud as Cairo typed, "your profile caught my attention. It's not every day you meet someone who quotes Muriel Rukeyser and makes marine conservation puns in the same bio." The message they were composing would set in motion events that would reshape their family in ways they couldn't imagine. As they worked, the fog outside their window began to lift, revealing patches of bright blue sky, nature's own metaphor for the revelations to come. In her downtown office overlooking the bay, Luna Rivers sat at her desk, staring at Adrian's dating profile. Her colleague Atlas leaned against her office door frame, noting her unusual distraction. "You never talk about your past," he observed, his voice carrying both curiosity and concern. Atlas had worked with Luna for 5 years, watching her build her reputation in environmental law while maintaining an air of mystery about her personal life. "Some doors are better left closed," she replied automatically, even as her heart pulled her toward a future she'd once abandoned. The irony of the universe, bringing Adrian's profile to her attention, wasn't lost on her. She had spent years building a new life, trying to atone for her past choices through her work, protecting the environment and advocating for causes bigger than herself. But as she looked at Adrian's profile photo, his familiar smile slightly more reserved than she remembered, silver threading through his dark hair at the temples, she felt the walls she'd built around her past beginning to crack. What none of them knew, as the pieces of their carefully constructed lives began to shift, was that the simple act of the twins playing matchmaker would unravel a decade of secrets, forcing them all to confront truths they'd tried to bury and emotions they'd attempted to forget. The fog continued to lift over San Francisco Bay, revealing the vibrant city below, much like the truth that would soon emerge from behind the carefully constructed facades they'd all built over the years. The stage was set for a reunion none of them had planned, orchestrated innocently by 2 12-year-old boys who simply wanted their father to smile again. Chapter 3. Operation Cupid. The Sunday morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Phoenix's family penthouse, casting geometric shadows across the twins' secret meeting spot. Zayden and Cairo sat at the sleek modern dining table with Phoenix and Ember, their war room as they dubbed it, scattered with tablets, notebooks, and half-eaten breakfast pastries from the trendy bakery downstairs. "Operation Cupid needs to be perfect," Zayden declared, his usual confidence tinged with nervous energy. He was wearing his lucky NASA t-shirt, a habit he'd developed for important occasions. "We can't mess this up." Cairo nodded solemnly, his fingers drumming an anxious rhythm on his tablet. "Dad deserves happiness. Real happiness, not just the kind he pretends to have when he thinks we're watching." The Yang siblings exchanged meaningful glances. As the twins' closest friends, they'd witnessed Adrian Matthews's dedication to single parenthood firsthand over the years. Phoenix pulled up a holographic display, his mother's latest tech innovation that they were beta testing, showing Luna's profile floating in the air between them. "The message has to sound authentic," Ember mused, her purple hair caught in the morning light as she studied the hovering image. "We can't let it seem like it's coming from well-meaning, but obviously meddling kids." Phoenix's fingers flew across his keyboard, accessing various social media analytics tools he'd modified for their purpose. "I've analyzed Dad's writing style from his professional blogs and social media. We can use natural language processing to match his tone perfectly." "Sometimes I forget you're some kind of genius," Zayden teased, though his eyes showed admiration for his friend's skills. "Prodigy," Phoenix corrected with a grin. "My moms prefer the term prodigy. Genius sounds too pretentious." The twins had spent the night at the Yang's apartment, a regular weekend occurrence that their father encouraged, believing it gave him time to catch up on work. In reality, Adrian had spent the evening staring at his own dating profile, wondering why it suddenly seemed more polished than he remembered. Ember, ever the voice of practical wisdom, pulled up another holographic window. "Let's focus on the strategy. First contact is crucial. We need to highlight the connections without being obvious." "Like the Stanford connection," Cairo suggested, adjusting his glasses, "and the environmental work with Ocean Alliance." "But we can't mention anything too specific," Zayden added quickly. "Dad would get suspicious if we knew too many details about his pro bono work." As they crafted the perfect message, none of them noticed Mrs. Yang, Phoenix and Ember's mother, pausing briefly in the doorway. Margaret Yang, a pioneer in AI ethics, recognized the determined look on the children's faces. It reminded her of Adrian years ago, when he and Ariana had first started dating in college. The irony wasn't lost on her, though. She chose to keep walking, letting the children believe their secret was safe. In her home office upstairs, Dr. Sarah Yang, Phoenix and Ember's other mother and Margaret's wife, was video conferencing with Nova Matthews. The two women had been friends since their Stanford days, and Sarah immediately recognized the distress in Nova's expression. "They're planning something," Nova said without preamble. "The twins, and I think they've found her, Sarah. They found Ariana." Sarah's expression remained carefully neutral. As one of the few people who had maintained distant contact with Ariana over the years, mostly through professional circles, she had known about her friend's name change and career shift. But she had honored Ariana's request for privacy, a decision that now weighed heavily on her conscience. Back at the dining table, the children were putting the finishing touches on their message to Luna. Phoenix had written a small program to analyze the text for authenticity, comparing it to Adrian's writing style. "Dear Luna," Cairo read aloud, his voice soft but steady. "Your profile caught my attention in the best possible way. It's rare to find someone who quotes Muriel Rukeyser while making marine conservation puns. Your work with Ocean Alliance is impressive. I've actually done some tech consulting for marine conservation projects myself. Would you be interested in discussing environmental law and bad puns over coffee? Adrian, the casualness to professionalism ratio is perfect," Phoenix declared, showing them the analysis results. "It matches Dad's writing style with 94% accuracy. Now we just need to figure out the perfect time to send it," Zayden said, glancing at their carefully prepared timeline. Ember pulled up another holographic window, this one showing various coffee shops around San Francisco. "We need to suggest the right meeting place, too. Somewhere public but intimate. Somewhere that shows Dad's thoughtfulness." "The Little Owl Cafe," Cairo suggested suddenly. "It's near the Maritime Museum, so they could talk about ocean conservation. Plus, Dad loves their lavender lattes." As they fine-tuned their plans, across the city, Luna Rivers was preparing for a presentation on marine sanctuary expansion. Her office walls were covered with maps of the Pacific coast, but her mind kept drifting to the dating app notification she'd received the night before. Adrian's profile had appeared in her suggested matches, and she'd spent hours debating whether to swipe right. 10 years had passed since she'd walked away from her family, choosing career and personal growth over the responsibilities she hadn't felt ready to handle. The woman she'd become, Luna Rivers, environmental crusader and advocate for change, was built on the foundation of lessons learned from her greatest regret. Her assistant, Aria, knocked on her office door. "The board members are ready for your presentation, Ms. Rivers." Luna nodded, gathering her materials while trying to quiet the storm of emotions in her chest. On her desk, partially hidden behind her laptop, sat a small frame holding a photograph she'd never been able to put away. A sonogram image of twins, dated 12 years ago. Meanwhile, Nova paced her apartment, her girlfriend River watching with concern. The weight of knowledge pressed heavily on Nova's shoulders. She had recognized Luna immediately from the dating profile. Despite the name change and professional transformation, some things couldn't be hidden from someone who had once considered you family. "Those boys deserve to know their mother," River suggested gently, her voice carrying the wisdom of someone who had navigated her own complex family dynamics. "They deserve to not be hurt again," Nova countered, remembering the years of tears and questions. The twins had stopped asking about their mother around age 7, but Nova had noticed how they still studied every dark-haired woman who passed by, searching for features they might recognize from old photographs. In their own home, Adrian Matthews sat at his desk, reviewing code for a new project. His dating app notification light blinked steadily, but he hadn't checked it in days. The twins' recent interest in his social life had made him wary, though their obvious concern for his happiness touched him deeply. The sound of the front door opening announced the twins' return from their sleepover. Their excited chatter filled the house, a sound that always made Adrian smile, regardless of his mood. He saved his work and stood up, ready to hear about their adventures at the Yangs. "Dad!" they called in unison as they bounded into his home office. "We learned how to make those almond croissants you love." Adrian hugged his sons, noting how they were almost tall enough to reach his shoulders now. "Did you thank Mrs. and Dr. Yang for having you over?" "Of course," Zayden replied, sharing a quick glance with his brother. "Phoenix's moms are teaching us all sorts of things." What Adrian didn't notice was Cairo carefully placing his tablet on the desk, angled so their father would see the dating app notification when it came through. The message to Luna was scheduled to send in exactly 17 minutes, time to catch both recipients during their Sunday afternoon routines. As the family settled into their usual Sunday activities, none of them could have predicted how their carefully laid plans would soon interconnect with long-buried truths, creating a web of coincidences that would force them all to confront the past they thought they'd left behind. The San Francisco fog began its evening advance, wrapping the city in its mysterious embrace, much like the secrets that swirled around the Matthews family, secrets that would soon be brought to light by the innocent matchmaking attempts of two 12-year-old boys who simply wanted their father to find love again. Chapter 4. The Response. The message to Luna arrived precisely as planned during the quiet lull of a Sunday afternoon. She sat in her corner office at Rivers Environmental Law, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of San Francisco Bay. The dating app notification chimed softly, competing with the distant sound of foghorns and the gentle hum of her air purifier. Luna's heart skipped when she saw Adrian's name. She remembered him. How could she not? The profile showed a man who had aged gracefully, silver threading through his dark hair at the temples, laugh lines deeper than she remembered, but his eyes still held that same thoughtful intensity that had first drawn her to him at Stanford. Her fingers hovered over the screen, trembling slightly. The profile listed his company as tech executive and showed his location in Pacific Heights, but notably absent were any hints of their shared past or mentions of the twins. Through a series of carefully crafted omissions and the cosmic irony of fate, neither party had realized who the other truly was. "You're staring at that phone like it holds the secrets of the universe," observed Atlas Drake, her law partner, as he appeared in her doorway with 2 cups of artisanal coffee. Atlas had been her closest confidant since she'd rebuilt her life as Luna Rivers, though even he knew nothing of her past identity as Ariana Matthews. "Just an interesting message," she replied, accepting the coffee with a grateful smile. The ceramic mug warmed her suddenly cold hands. "Must be quite the message to distract you from the Morrison case," Atlas noted, settling into one of her office's modern chairs. The afternoon sun caught his silver-rimmed glasses, momentarily hiding his perceptive gaze. Luna read Adrian's message again, her legal training making her analyze every carefully chosen word. The reference to Ocean Alliance caught her attention. She hadn't known he'd done consulting work in marine conservation. The thought that they'd been operating in overlapping circles all these years sent a shiver down her spine. Meanwhile, across the city in the Matthews townhouse, Zayden and Cairo pretended to do homework while obsessively checking their father's dating profile. They'd borrowed his phone again during breakfast, using his fingerprint while he dozed over his Sunday crossword puzzle. "Do you think she'll respond?" Cairo whispered, pushing his glasses up nervously. The boys sat at their shared desk, homework scattered around them as camouflage. "She has to," Zayden replied, with characteristic optimism. "Phoenix's algorithm said they're a 94% match. That's basically destiny." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at their bedroom door. Aunt Nova stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. She'd been acting strange lately, watching them with an intensity that made both boys slightly nervous. "What are you two plotting?" she asked, trying to keep her tone light, despite the worry gnawing at her chest. Nova had spent the morning debating with River about whether to intervene, whether to warn Adrian about who Luna really was. "Just math homework," the twins answered in perfect unison, their innocent expressions almost too perfect. Nova stepped into their room, taking in the familiar space with new eyes. The walls were covered with space posters and science fair ribbons, but what caught her attention was the family photo on their dresser, one of the few that showed Adrian with the twins as toddlers, taken just before Ariana left. "You know you can talk to me about anything, right?" she said softly, sitting on the edge of Cairo's perfectly made bed. "Even things you think might upset me, or your dad." The twins exchanged quick glances, having one of their silent conversations that Nova had never quite learned to decode. "We know, Aunt Nova," Cairo said carefully. "We're just trying to help Dad be happy," Zayden added, his voice carrying a maturity that made Nova's heart ache. Before Nova could respond, a notification sound came from the tablet the twins had tried to casually cover with homework papers. Both boys jumped, and Nova noticed the dating app icon flash briefly before Zayden managed to flip the tablet over. In her downtown apartment, River was reviewing security footage from her cybersecurity firm when her phone lit up with a text from Nova. "They're definitely up to something." The dating app was open on their tablet. River set down her coffee, considering her response carefully. As someone who had grown up in foster care, she understood the complex emotions involved in parent-child reunions, whether planned or accidental. "Maybe this is the universe's way of healing old wounds," she typed back. Across the city, in the Yang's penthouse, Phoenix and Ember were monitoring the situation through a series of algorithms Phoenix had created. Their mothers were hosting a Sunday brunch for tech industry colleagues, providing perfect cover for their clandestine operation. "Message delivered and read," Phoenix reported, his fingers flying over his keyboard. "Her profile shows active status. She's typing." Ember leaned over her brother's shoulder, her purple hair falling forward. "Should we alert the twins?" "Wait," Phoenix said, his eyes fixed on the screen. "Let's see what she says first. We don't want to get their hopes up." In her office, Luna finally began to type a response, deleting and rewriting it several times. Atlas watched with growing curiosity, having never seen his composed partner so flustered over a dating app message. "You never talk about your past," he observed quietly, studying her expression. "In 5 years of partnership, you've never mentioned family beyond your grandmother." Luna's fingers paused over the keyboard. "Some doors are better left closed," she replied automatically, even as her heart pulled her toward a future she'd once abandoned. The irony of the universe bringing Adrian's profile to her attention wasn't lost on her. She'd spent years building a new life, trying to atone for her past choices through her work, protecting the environment, and advocating for causes bigger than herself. The message she finally sent was careful, professional, with just a hint of warmth. "Adrian, thank you for your message. Your work with Ocean Alliance sounds fascinating. I'd love to hear more about the intersection of technology and marine conservation. Coffee would be wonderful. The Little Owl Cafe near the Maritime Museum is one of my favorite spots, if you're familiar with it." The response came faster than anyone expected, making the twins nearly drop their tablet when the notification appeared. They had positioned themselves in the living room, strategically close to their father's favorite reading chair, where he sat reviewing work documents on his laptop. "Dad!" Zayden called out, trying to keep his voice casual. "Your phone just buzzed. Might be important." Adrian reached for his phone absently, his mind still on coding problems. The dating app notification made him pause. He didn't remember being this active on the platform lately. Opening the message, he found himself intrigued by Luna's response, particularly her suggestion of the Little Owl Cafe. It had been his favorite spot for years. "You seem happy," Cairo observed innocently, watching his father's expression soften as he read the message. Adrian looked up at his sons, noting their poorly concealed interest. "You two seem unusually invested in my phone notifications lately," he commented, raising an eyebrow. "We just want you to be happy, Dad," they chorused, sharing twin looks of angelic innocence that immediately made Adrian suspicious. In her office, Luna found herself looking up the Little Owl Cafe's location again, though she knew it by heart. She had chosen it deliberately. It was close enough to her office to be convenient, but far enough from Adrian's usual haunts to minimize the risk of running into mutual acquaintances. What she didn't know was that it had become his favorite cafe over the years, another cosmic coincidence in a growing list of them. As the sun began its descent over the bay, casting long shadows through the city's steep streets, all the players in this unfolding drama felt the weight of anticipation. Nova sat in her apartment, debating whether to drive over to her brother's house and confess what she knew. The twins huddled with their tablets, monitoring their father's dating app activity with the intensity of NASA scientists tracking a space mission. And Luna stood at her office window, watching the fog roll in, wondering if the universe was giving her a second chance she didn't deserve. What none of them realized was that their carefully constructed plans and protections were about to collapse like a house of cards, blown apart by the innocent matchmaking attempts of two 12-year-old boys who simply wanted their father to find love again. The stage was set for a reunion that would force them all to confront the past they thought they'd left behind and the truths they'd tried to bury. Chapter 5. Preparations. The week leading up to the coffee date felt like an eternity to everyone involved. Nova's modern loft apartment, usually a haven of minimalist tranquility, had become a war room of internal conflict. She paced the polished concrete floors, her bare feet silent against the cool surface as her girlfriend River watched from their custom-made window seat, overlooking the city. "Those boys deserve to know their mother," River suggested gently, her dark eyes following Nova's restless movement. The setting sun painted the room in amber hues, catching the silver threads in River's braids. As someone who had grown up in the foster system, she understood the complicated emotions surrounding parent-child reunions better than most. "They deserve to not be hurt again," Nova countered, running her hands through her short hair, a nervous habit she shared with her brother. She paused by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching fog roll in from the bay. The city was disappearing into white, much like the clear boundaries she'd always tried to maintain were now blurring beyond recognition. River set aside her laptop, where she'd been reviewing security protocols for her cybersecurity firm. "Sometimes healing hurts," she said softly. "You can't protect them from their own history forever." Nova turned to face her girlfriend, shoulders tense with the weight of knowledge she'd been carrying. "You didn't see them after she left, River. You didn't have to explain to 2-year-olds why their mother wasn't coming home. You didn't watch Adrian try to be both parents while his heart was breaking." The memory of those early days still felt raw. Nova had moved in with Adrian for the first 6 months after Ariana left, helping with midnight feedings and early morning tantrums, watching her brother struggle to balance his tech startup with single parenthood. She'd been there when the twins took their first steps, said their first words, and slowly stopped asking for their mother. Across the city, in her corner office at River's Environmental Law, Luna sat at her desk, staring at Adrian's dating profile. Her colleague Atlas noticed her distraction, leaning against her doorframe with 2 cups of their favorite specialty coffee, a habit he'd developed over their 5 years of partnership. You never talk about your past, he observed, setting one cup on her desk. The steam rose between them like the secrets Luna had been keeping. Atlas had known her since she'd first arrived in San Francisco, helping her build her reputation in environmental law while respecting her privacy. But lately, he'd noticed a change. In her, a restlessness, as if the carefully constructed walls of her new life were beginning to crack. "Some doors are better left closed," she replied automatically, though her voice lacked its usual conviction. The photo on her desk, the one she usually kept hidden behind her laptop, sat exposed today. It was a sonogram image, dated 12 years ago, showing two distinct shapes that made her heart ache every time she looked at it. Atlas settled into one of her office's modern chairs, his expression thoughtful. "You know, in court, we always say the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deep you try to bury it." Luna's fingers traced the edge of her tablet, where Adrian's message still waited for a final confirmation about their coffee date. "What if the truth ruins everything I've built?" she whispered, more to herself than to Atlas. Meanwhile, at the Matthews townhouse, the twins were engaged in their own preparations. Their bedroom had transformed into a command center, with Phoenix and Ember joining them after school to fine-tune the details of Operation Cupid. "Dad needs to wear his blue blazer," Zayden declared, sorting through their father's closet via the smart home's wardrobe management system. "It makes him look professional, but not too formal." Cairo nodded in agreement, adjusting his glasses as he reviewed their checklist on his tablet. "And we've already made sure his favorite parking spot near the Little Owl will be available. Phoenix accessed the smart parking system." "Ethically accessed," Phoenix corrected quickly, glancing at the bedroom door. "My moms would kill me if they knew I was using their security clearance for matchmaking purposes." Ember rolled her eyes at her brother's concern. "Please, like Doctor. Yang didn't know exactly what you were doing when she accidentally left her parking authority credentials logged in yesterday." The teens had spread their resources across Zayden's bed, tablets, notebooks, and Phoenix's latest coding project, which he claimed could predict romantic compatibility based on writing style analysis. The walls of the twins' room reflected their dual nature. One side covered in space exploration posters and robotics awards, the other showcasing marine biology diagrams and environmental science fair ribbons, an unconscious echo of their parents' interests that none of them had noticed. "Should we tell Aunt Nova?" Cairo asked for the 100th time that week, voicing the concern that had been nagging at them all. "She's been acting weird lately, like she knows something." "No way," Zayden replied firmly, closing his father's digital wardrobe display. "She'd try to stop it. Remember how she background-checked Dad's last date? The one who worked at that quantum computing startup?" "That was different," Ember interjected, her purple hair catching the afternoon light as she looked up from her tablet. "That woman had 3 different LinkedIn profiles. Aunt Nova was right to be suspicious." Phoenix's fingers flew over his keyboard, running another analysis of Luna's digital footprint. "Well, Ms. Rivers checks out completely. Stanford Law, California Bar Association, environmental law victories. Everything matches perfectly." What Phoenix's algorithms couldn't detect was the careful way Luna had constructed her new identity, building it piece by piece over the years until it felt more real than the person she'd been before. His search couldn't reveal the nights she'd spent looking at old photos of her sons, or the donations she'd anonymously made to their school's science program every year. In the kitchen downstairs, Adrian Matthews stood at his smart cooking station, absently stirring a pot of his signature pasta sauce while his mind wandered to the upcoming coffee date. The house's AI assistant, which the twins had named Aria, a coincidence that would later seem almost too perfect, announced that the sauce was about to burn. "Thanks, Aria," Adrian murmured, reducing the heat. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about this date. The way Luna had suggested the Little Owl Cafe, his favorite spot for the past decade, felt like more than coincidence. Her profile had drawn him in with its familiar qualities: the love of terrible puns, the passion for environmental causes, the quotes from obscure poets he'd loved in college. The sound of teenage laughter drifted down from upstairs, making him smile despite his preoccupation. His sons had been surprisingly supportive of his dating attempts lately, suspiciously so, if he was being honest with himself. Their sudden interest in his social life coincided perfectly with his dating profile becoming mysteriously more active. Back in her apartment, Nova sat at her desk, staring at an old photograph she'd pulled from her personal cloud storage. It showed Adrian and Ariana at their wedding, both laughing at something off-camera, their joy untouched by the complications that would come later. Next to it, she'd pulled up Luna River's professional profile photo. The changes were subtle but deliberate. The shorter hair, the professional wardrobe, the more guarded smile. But the eyes were the same, carrying the same intensity that Nova remembered from family dinners and holiday celebrations. River approached quietly, setting a cup of tea beside her girlfriend. "You know," she said carefully, "sometimes the universe has its own timeline for healing. Maybe this isn't about protecting them anymore. Maybe it's about letting them find their own way to the truth." Nova leaned back in her chair, feeling the weight of her knowledge like a physical burden. "The twins are so much like her," she admitted quietly. "Cairo has her focus, her way of seeing straight to the heart of things, and Zayden has her passion, her ability to dream big and convince others to dream with her." "Maybe that's why they found her," River suggested, even without knowing who she was. At River's environmental law, Luna finally confirmed the coffee date details, her heart racing as she typed the response. The Little Owl Cafe had been her sanctuary when she first moved back to San Francisco 5 years ago, its quiet corner tables and ocean-themed decor providing comfort as she built her new life. She hadn't known it had become Adrian's favorite place too, another thread in the tapestry of coincidences that seemed to be pulling them back together. Atlas watched his partner's internal struggle, recognizing the signs of someone preparing to face their past. "You know," he said carefully, "in all the years I've known you, I've never seen you this affected by a simple coffee date." Luna looked up at her friend, wondering if she could trust him with the truth she'd been carrying. But before she could respond, her phone chimed with a new message. Adrian confirming the time and adding a terrible pun about coffee that made her breath catch in her throat. It was exactly the kind of joke he used to make over breakfast, back when their life together had seemed full of possibility. In their bedroom, the twins were putting the finishing touches on their plan. They had coordinated with Phoenix to ensure their father's smart car would take the scenic route to the cafe, driving past the Maritime Museum, where Luna's organization had recently installed an interactive exhibition about marine conservation. "Everything's perfect," Zayden declared, closing their planning document with a flourish. "Dad's gonna love her." Cairo nodded, but his expression was thoughtful. "Is it weird that I feel like we already know her somehow? Like she's familiar?" "It's probably because Phoenix's algorithm found such a perfect match," Ember suggested quickly, sharing a concerned glance with her brother. She had been researching old Stanford yearbooks in her free time, putting together pieces of a puzzle she wasn't sure she should solve. As the day drew to a close, the fog continued its steady advance through the city, wrapping each participant in this unfolding drama in its mysterious embrace. Nova stood at her window, debating whether to drive to her brother's house and reveal what she knew. The twins, huddled with their friends, fine-tuning plans they believed would bring their father happiness, and Luna sat in her office, watching the same fog roll in, wondering if the universe was giving her a chance to right the wrongs of her past. None of them knew that their carefully constructed plans and protections were about to collide in ways they couldn't predict, catalyzed by the innocent matchmaking attempts of two 12-year-old boys who simply wanted their father to find love again. The stage was set for a reunion that would force them all to confront the truths they'd tried to bury, the pain they'd attempted to forget, and the possibility that sometimes the long way home is the only way forward. The fog continued its advance, blurring the lines between past and present, between what was lost and what might be found again. Tomorrow would bring clarity, for better or worse, but tonight each of them sat with their own version of the truth, waiting for the morning that would change everything. Chapter 6. The Meeting. The morning of the coffee date dawned clear and bright, a rarity for San Francisco in early spring. The twins had convinced their father to meet Luna at the California Academy of Sciences, their favorite spot in Golden Gate Park. The massive living roof of the museum caught the morning light, its rolling hills covered in native plants creating a perfect backdrop for what they hoped would be a magical first meeting. "We'll just happen to be looking at the penguins," Zayden explained innocently at breakfast, spreading jam on his toast with exaggerated care. "Very far away from your date. Completely coincidental," Cairo added with an angelic smile, adjusting his glasses in the way he always did when trying to appear extra sincere. Adrian looked between his sons, noting their matching expressions of studied innocence. Dressed in the blue blazer that had mysteriously migrated to the front of his closet, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was part of an elaborate plan he didn't quite understand. "And Phoenix and Ember just happened to be meeting you there?" he asked, raising an eyebrow as he sipped his morning coffee. "Science project research," both boys answered simultaneously, then shared a quick glance that spoke volumes. The museum was already bustling when they arrived, school groups and tourists moving through the exhibits like schools of fish. The twins had chosen this location carefully. The Steinhardt Aquarium provided the perfect cover for their surveillance operation, while the Morrison Planetarium offered emergency escape routes if needed. Phoenix and Ember were waiting by the albino alligator exhibit, trying to look casual despite the array of technology hidden in their backpacks. Phoenix had reprogrammed his smartwatch to monitor the museum's security feeds, while Ember kept track of their father's location through a modified version of the family's safety app. "Target approaching main entrance," Phoenix whispered into his communicator, making Ember roll her eyes at his spy movie dramatics. "This isn't a covert ops mission," she reminded him, though she couldn't help checking her own device for updates. The quartet made their way to the aquarium level, positioning themselves strategically near the penguin exhibit. Through the curved glass walls, they could see the museum's cafe area while remaining relatively hidden among the crowds of visitors. Meanwhile, Luna sat in her parked car outside the museum, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles had turned white. The familiar building loomed before her, its modern architecture a stark contrast to the traditional park surroundings. She'd been here countless times for environmental law events, but today felt different. Today, the past and present were about to collide in ways she couldn't predict. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, checking her reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman who looked back at her was polished, professional, environmental lawyer Luna Rivers, not Ariana Matthews, the young mother who'd walked away from her family a decade ago. Inside the museum, Adrian found himself drawn to the pendulum exhibit, watching the large brass weight swing in its perpetual arc, marking time as it had since his own childhood visits. He remembered bringing the twins here when they were toddlers, how they'd been fascinated by the way it knocked over pins to mark the Earth's rotation. Nova, unable to stay away, had positioned herself in the museum's cafe, ostensibly working on her laptop, but really watching the entrance with hawk-like intensity. River had tried to talk her out of coming, but some things were stronger than reason. The boys are here, Nova texted to River, with reinforcements. They're definitely up to something. River's response came quickly. Let it play out. Some things need to happen in their own time. The twins and their friends had perfected their positions near the penguin exhibit, where the curved glass created interesting acoustics that allowed them to hear conversations from the cafe area while appearing to be absorbed in watching the birds. Dad's by the pendulum, Cairo reported, pretending to take notes about penguin behavior, looking nervous but good. Ms. Rivers just entered the building, Phoenix added, his eyes on his modified smartwatch display. Coming through the main entrance now. Ember, who had positioned herself near a display about marine conservation, suddenly straightened. Wait, she said, her voice sharp with recognition. Guys, I think... But before she could finish her thought, Luna appeared at the top of the aquarium stairs. The morning light streaming through the building's glass ceiling caught her profile, and for a moment she looked exactly like the woman in the old photographs the twins kept hidden in their desk drawer. Time seemed to slow as Luna made her way toward the cafe area. Adrian, turning from the pendulum display, caught sight of her and froze. Recognition dawned in his eyes, followed by a complex mix of emotions that played across his face like shadows. But it was the twin gasps behind him that shattered the moment. "Mom," Cairo whispered, memories of photographs hidden in their grandmother's album suddenly clicking into place. The notebook he'd been holding slipped from his fingers, falling to the floor with a soft thud that seemed to echo in the suddenly quiet space. Zayden grabbed his brother's hand, both boys rooted to the spot as their carefully planned matchmaking crumbled around them. Their world, which had seemed so carefully ordered just moments ago, tilted on its axis as past and present collided with the force of tectonic plates. Luna's eyes widened as she took in the scene before her, Adrian looking both familiar and strange in his blue blazer, and behind him, two boys who were mirror images of each other, their faces carrying echoes of her own features mixed with Adrian's. "I didn't know," she breathed, her carefully constructed professional demeanor cracking. "The profile. I never thought." Adrian stepped protectively in front of the twins, an instinct born from years of being both mother and father to them. But Zayden, always the more impulsive of the twins, darted forward, a lifetime of questions burning in his throat. Phoenix and Ember exchanged alarmed looks, their elaborate surveillance operation forgotten in the face of this unexpected development. Nova rose from her seat in the cafe, her laptop forgotten as she moved toward her family, unsure whether to intervene or let the scene play out. The other museum visitors continued their tours around them, oblivious to the drama unfolding in their midst. The penguins continued their underwater ballet, the pendulum kept its steady swing, and somewhere above them, the living roof continued its quiet photosynthesis. But for the Matthews family, time had stopped, crystallized in a moment of recognition that would change everything. "You're Luna Rivers," Cairo said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "The environmental lawyer who's been fighting to protect the marine sanctuaries." "And you're our mother," Zayden added, his voice carrying a mix of accusation and wonder. "Ariana Matthews." Luna, or Ariana, the name she hadn't heard spoken aloud in years, felt tears welling in her eyes as she looked at her sons. They were so grown, so beautiful, so much like their father. The crowded museum faded away as years of separation crashed into this single moment. Adrian found his voice at last, though it carried a roughness he couldn't quite control. "The boys arranged this," he said, understanding dawning. "They didn't know. None of us knew." Nova finally reached them, her presence a steadying force in the chaos. "I knew," she admitted quietly. "I recognized you from the dating profile. I've been trying to figure out how to tell everyone." The twins turned to their aunt, betrayal flashing across their identical faces. "You knew?" they asked in unison, their synchronized response a reminder of the bond they shared, a bond that had grown stronger in their mother's absence. Around them, the museum continued its normal operations. School groups moved through the exhibits, tourists snapped photos, and the gentle sound of flowing water from the aquarium tanks provided a surreal soundtrack to their family drama. "Perhaps we should move this conversation somewhere more private," Nova suggested, ever the practical one. "The butterfly exhibit is usually quiet this time of day." As they moved through the museum, each lost in their own thoughts, the magnitude of what had just happened began to sink in. The twins' simple plan to find their father happiness had instead unearthed the biggest mystery of their lives. Their mother hadn't just disappeared into the ether, she had been here, in the same city, building a new life under a new name. The butterflies danced around them in their enclosed garden, oblivious to the human drama unfolding beneath their delicate wings. As the family found seats on the wooden benches, each person carried the weight of a decade's worth of questions, answers, and uncertainties. The fog, as if sensing the gravity of the moment, began to roll in outside the museum's glass walls, wrapping the building in its ethereal embrace. Inside, a family torn apart by choices made long ago prepared to face the truth. Brought together by the innocent matchmaking attempts of two 12-year-old boys who had only wanted their father to smile again. Chapter 7. Recognition. The Butterfly Pavilion in the California Academy of Sciences had always been a place of transformation, but never quite like this. Brilliant blue morpho butterflies danced around the shocked family as they sat in tense silence, the humid air heavy with unspoken words. The moment Luna walked into the aquarium, time seemed to stop, crystallizing into a memory none of them would ever forget. "Mom." Cairo's whisper still echoed in their minds, the single word carrying the weight of a decade's worth of questions. He sat now between his brother and father, his glasses slightly fogged from the pavilion's humidity, hands clasped tightly in his lap to hide their trembling. Zayden, usually the more outspoken twin, found himself uncharacteristically quiet, his hazel eyes, so like his mother's, studying Luna's face with an intensity that made her heart ache. The similarities were undeniable now that they were face to face. The same determined set of the jaw, the same slight tilt of the head when processing complex emotions. Adrian stood slightly apart from the group, his back straight and shoulders tense, the protective stance he'd developed over years of being both mother and father to his sons. The blue blazer the twins had so carefully selected now felt like armor, shielding him from the tsunami of emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "I didn't know," Luna repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Her professional facade had cracked completely, leaving behind traces of Ariana that were painfully familiar to Adrian. The profile? There were no photos of the boys. The last name was just listed as M. I never thought... Nova sat between the two parties like a mediator, her girlfriend River's words echoing in her mind. Sometimes healing hurts. She watched her nephews process the revelation, seeing the moment their scientific minds began connecting dots they'd never known existed. "You've been here," Cairo said suddenly, his voice stronger now, analytical. "In San Francisco. All this time." He pulled out his tablet, fingers flying across the screen as he accessed public records. "River's environmental law was founded 5 years ago. You've been less than 4 miles from our house." Zayden finally found his voice, though it cracked with emotion. "We saw you on the news last month. The Marine Sanctuary Expansion Project. Dad, remember? We watched the press conference together." Adrian nodded slowly, remembering how he'd commented on the lawyer's persuasive speaking style, never recognizing his former wife behind her new name and carefully constructed identity. The irony felt like a physical weight in his chest. "I followed your lives," Luna admitted, twisting her hands in her lap. "From a distance. I saw your science fair projects in the city finals. The marine biology presentation last year." She looked at Cairo. "And the robotics competition." Her eyes shifted to Zayden. "I was there, in the back of the audience." "Why didn't you say anything?" the twins asked in unison, their synchronized response making Luna flinch with its familiarity. How many times had they done that as toddlers? Phoenix and Ember, who had followed the family to the butterfly pavilion, stood awkwardly by the entrance, feeling like intruders in this intensely private moment. But Ember's presence suddenly sparked a memory in Zayden. "The woman who helped me when I fell outside the robotics competition," he said, eyes widening. "The one who knew exactly where the first aid station was. That was you." Luna nodded, tears finally spilling onto her cheeks. "You were bleeding, and I couldn't just walk away, not again." The word "again" hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Adrian ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture both twins had inherited, and finally spoke. "You changed your name," he said, his voice carefully controlled, "became someone new, built a whole new life just miles away from us." "Luna Rivers," Cairo murmured, pulling up her professional biography on his tablet. "Environmental lawyer, marine conservation advocate, guest lecturer at Stanford Law." His voice took on an edge of hurt pride. "We did all this research for Dad's perfect match, and we never knew we were researching our own mother." Phoenix shifted uncomfortably, his modified smartwatch suddenly feeling like a betrayal of his best friend's trust. "The algorithms should have caught this," he said quietly to his sister. "How did they miss it?" "Because she didn't want to be found," Ember replied, understanding dawning in her eyes. "She'd built her new identity too well." Luna looked at her sons, seeing in their faces all the years she'd missed. Cairo's serious expression behind his glasses reminded her so much of Adrian during their college days. And Zayden's barely contained emotions mirrored her own younger self. "I was young," she began, then stopped herself. "No, that's not good enough. I was scared, overwhelmed. I had these dreams of changing the world, and I convinced myself I couldn't do that, and be a good mother at the same time." She looked at Adrian. "You were already so good with them, so natural at parenting. I felt unnecessary." "Unnecessary?" Adrian's voice cracked. "They cried for you for months, years. Do you know how many nights I spent explaining to two toddlers why their mother wasn't coming home?" Nova reached for her brother's hand, offering silent support. She remembered those nights all too well, the twins' confusion, Adrian's exhaustion, the way their whole family had rallied around them. "The environmental law program," Luna continued, her voice thick with regret. "It was my escape route. I told myself I'd come back when I had something to show for it, when I'd made a difference. But months turned into years, and the longer I stayed away, the harder it became to come back," Cairo finished, his analytical mind piecing together the puzzle. "So you built a new life instead, became Luna Rivers, environmental crusader." "While we built our own life without you," Zayden added, his voice carrying a mix of anger and confusion. "Did you know we joined the Marine Conservation Club at school, that we're working on a project to track microplastics in the bay?" Luna's eyes widened. "The student proposal that crossed my desk last month, that was you." The twins nodded, and fresh tears spilled down Luna's cheeks as she realized how close their paths had been crossing all these years, like ships passing in the fog that so often wrapped their city in its grey embrace. A brilliant blue morpho butterfly landed on the bench between the twins, its wings slowly opening and closing like a breathing meditation. The family watched it in silence, each lost in their own thoughts about transformation and second chances. "I don't expect forgiveness," Luna said finally, her voice steady despite her tears. "I don't even expect understanding. But seeing you here, knowing you've grown into such amazing young men." She looked at Adrian. "You did that. You gave them everything I was too afraid to." Adrian shook his head slightly. "They did it themselves. They're extraordinary kids. Something you would know if you'd been here." The twins exchanged glances, having one of their silent conversations that had always fascinated and slightly unnerved their father. Finally, Cairo spoke, his voice carrying the wisdom that sometimes made him seem older than his 12 years. "We didn't plan this," he said, gesturing to the space between them all. "We just wanted Dad to be happy. To smile like he used to," Zayden added softly. "To sing in the kitchen again." The simple honesty of their intention hung in the air, making the complexity of the adult world seem suddenly ridiculous in comparison. The fog outside had grown thicker, wrapping the museum in a cocoon of white that made the butterfly pavilion feel like its own separate universe, suspended in time and space. In this moment of raw truth, surrounded by butterflies and held in nature's transformative space, a family fractured by choices made long ago faced the possibility of a different kind of future, one that none of them had planned, but that might somehow lead to healing none of them knew they needed. Chapter 8. Truths and Tears. Luna's eyes filled with tears as she looked at her sons, so grown, so beautiful, so much like their father. The crowded aquarium had faded into background noise as they moved to a more private space within the California Academy of Sciences. They found themselves in the Living Roof's observation area, where native California wildflowers swayed in the breeze, and the fog created an intimate cocoon around them. "I need to understand," Zayden said, breaking the heavy silence. His voice carried a maturity beyond his 12 years as he stood beside his brother, their shoulders touching in silent support. "Did you ever think about coming back?" Cairo's hand found his twins, their matching silver science fair rings clicking together, a sound that made Luna's heart clench as she noticed this small detail of their lives she'd missed. "Every day," she whispered, her professional composure crumbling completely. "I thought about you every single day, but the longer I stayed away—" She paused, struggling to find words that wouldn't sound like excuses. Adrian watched his former wife, this stranger called Luna Rivers, who wore Ariana's face but carried herself so differently. The environmental lawyer's confident stance had melted away, leaving behind echoes of the young mother who'd walked away from them a decade ago. "You were 4 blocks away when they had chicken pox," he said quietly, his voice carrying years of suppressed hurt. 8 minutes from their elementary school graduation. Walking distance from every birthday, every milestone, every moment they needed their mother. Nova stood slightly apart from the group, her protective instincts warring with River's words about letting healing take its course. She remembered the nights she'd spent helping Adrian research missing persons reports before they'd realized Ariana's disappearance had been voluntary. "I built a wall," Luna admitted, her fingers twisting the eco-friendly wooden bracelet she wore, a nervous habit that Cairo immediately recognized as his own. "Between Luna Rivers and Ariana Matthews. Between the person I became and the person I'd been. I told myself I was doing important work, making the world better for you, even if I couldn't be there. We needed our mom more than the world needed another environmental lawyer," Cairo said softly, his analytical mind trying to make sense of the emotional chaos. He pulled out his tablet, where dozens of news articles about Luna River's legal victories were stored. Research they'd done for their matchmaking scheme that now felt like a cruel joke. Phoenix and Ember, who had maintained a respectful distance, exchanged worried glances. They'd been part of this matchmaking plan from the beginning, helping their friends try to find happiness for their father, never suspecting they were actually orchestrating a family reunion. "The algorithm should have caught this," Phoenix muttered, still bothered by the technological oversight. "The facial recognition, the background checks." "She built her new identity too well," Ember replied quietly. "Sometimes the heart finds what technology misses." Luna took a tentative step toward her sons, stopping when both boys instinctively shifted closer to their father. The movement was subtle, but spoke volumes about the family dynamic that had developed in her absence. "I saw you," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "at your school science fairs, at the robotics competitions. I kept telling myself I was protecting you by staying away, that coming back would only disrupt the life you'd built." "We saw you too," Zayden revealed, surprising everyone. "We just didn't know it was you. The woman who always sat in the back at our events, who clapped the loudest when we won awards. Dad," he turned to Adrian, "remember the anonymous donation to the school's marine science program last year?" Adrian's eyes widened with recognition. "The one that funded the twins' research project on microplastic pollution in the bay?" Luna nodded, tears flowing freely now. "I couldn't stay completely away. When I saw your proposals coming across my desk at the Environmental Law Center, I knew I had to help, even if you didn't know it was me." "But you never said anything," Cairo pressed, his voice carrying a hint of his brother's usual fire. "You watched us grow up from a distance like some kind of ghost." The fog swirled around the observation deck, creating an otherworldly atmosphere that matched the surreal nature of their conversation. A hummingbird darted between the native plants, its wings humming a counterpoint to the emotional tension in the air. "I convinced myself it was better that way," Luna admitted, "that you had a good life with your father, that appearing suddenly would only cause pain. I didn't expect—" She gestured helplessly at their surroundings. "Any of this." "You didn't expect us to accidentally find you," Zayden finished, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Through a dating app, of all things." Despite the gravity of the moment, Phoenix couldn't help but interject. "Actually, my algorithm matched you at 94% compatibility, the highest score we'd seen." "Because she already knew Dad," Cairo realized, his quick mind making connections. "All those things we thought were amazing coincidences. The coffee shop preference, the terrible puns, the Muriel Rukeyser quotes." "They weren't coincidences at all," Adrian concluded, running a hand through his hair in a gesture both twins had inherited. "They were echoes of our past." Luna looked at her former husband, seeing the silver threading his temples, the new laugh lines around his eyes, the way responsibility had shaped him into an even stronger version of the man she'd left behind. "You did an amazing job with them," she said softly. "They're incredible boys, smart, kind, thoughtful." "They did that themselves," Adrian interrupted, his voice firm but not unkind. "They're extraordinary kids, something you would know if you'd been here." The twins exchanged glances, having one of their silent conversations that had always fascinated and slightly unnerved their father. Finally, Cairo spoke, his voice carrying the wisdom that sometimes made him seem older than his 12 years. "We have questions," he said simply. "A lot of them." "And we deserve answers," Zayden added, his natural assertiveness tempered by the emotion of the moment. "Real ones, not just legal explanations or environmental mission statements." Luna nodded, understanding the gravity of what her sons were offering. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a chance to explain, to be heard, to possibly begin building something new from the ashes of what she'd abandoned. "Perhaps," Nova suggested, speaking for the first time in several minutes, We should move this conversation somewhere more comfortable. The museum cafe has a private room for events. As they moved through the museum, other visitors cast curious glances at their group. The identical twins with their serious expressions, the distinguished-looking man in the blue blazer, the environmental lawyer whose professional mask had cracked to reveal raw emotion, and the protective aunt who kept glancing between them all as if afraid they might shatter. The fog continued its advance outside, wrapping the museum in its ethereal embrace, but inside, clarity was slowly beginning to emerge from the confusion. The truth, so long buried under new names and carefully constructed identities, was finally forcing its way into the light. Behind them, on the living roof, native wildflowers continued their quiet growth, demonstrating nature's lesson about resilience and renewal. The family making their way to the cafe carried within them seeds of their own possible renewal, planted unwittingly by two 12-year-old boys who had only wanted their father to find happiness again. Chapter 9. Conversations. They moved to the museum's private cafe area, a space normally reserved for donor events and scientific presentations. Now it served as neutral ground for a family trying to bridge a decade of absence. The room's floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the fog-wrapped park, creating an intimate atmosphere that felt separate from the rest of the world. Nova arrived, having followed them in concern, and her presence helped steady the emotional storm. She took a seat at the edge of the group, close enough to support, but far enough to give them space. The twins sat together on one side of the table, their matching poses a reminder of the bond they'd formed in their mother's absence. "Why did you leave?" Cairo asked, his voice small but steady. The question hung in the air, heavy with years of wondering, of imagining, of trying to understand. Luna took a deep breath, her hands wrapped around an untouched cup of honey lavender tea. "Still Adrian's favorite," she noted absently. Her explanation was complicated: fear, ambition, youth, and regret, all tangled together in words that felt simultaneously insufficient and overwhelming. "I was 26, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "2 babies, a marriage, a career path I wasn't sure about anymore. Everything felt so permanent, so fixed. The environmental law program seemed like a chance to make a difference, to be more than just someone's wife and mother." "You were never just anything," Adrian interjected, his voice carrying old hurt. "You were everything to us." Zayden leaned forward, his hazel eyes, so like his mother's, intense with emotion. "Did you think about us during all those years?" "Every day," Luna replied without hesitation. "Every achievement, every case won, every piece of legislation passed. I told myself I was making the world better for you, even if I couldn't be there." "But you were there," Cairo said, pulling out his tablet. He'd spent the last hour compiling dates and events, his analytical mind seeking patterns. "The anonymous donor at our school science fair last year, the woman who helped Zayden when he fell at the robotics competition, the regular contributions to our school's environmental program." Luna nodded, tears threatening again. "I couldn't stay completely away. I told myself I was protecting you by keeping my distance, that coming back would only disrupt the life you'd built. But I needed to see you, to know you were okay." "We weren't always okay," Zayden said, his usual confidence cracking. "We needed our mom. Not an anonymous guardian angel, not a secret benefactor. Our mom." Phoenix and Ember, who had maintained a respectful distance at a nearby table, exchanged glances. They'd been part of the twins' life since elementary school, witnessing the quiet moments when their friends would see other kids with their mothers and go suddenly silent. "The hardest part," Cairo continued, his fingers tracing patterns on the tablet screen, "is that you were so close. 4 blocks from our house, 8 minutes from our school. We probably passed you on the street and never knew." I almost came back, Luna admitted, her professional composure completely gone now. So many times. When you had chicken pox, I saw Adrian at the pharmacy buying calamine lotion. At your elementary school graduation, I sat in the back row every birthday. But you didn't, Adrian finished quietly. You chose to stay Luna Rivers, environmental crusader, instead of being Ariana Matthews, mother of twins. The truth of his words settled over the table like the fog outside. Heavy, obscuring, but perhaps temporary. Nova shifted in her seat, remembering Rivers' words about letting healing happen in its own time. I built my whole identity around environmental law, Luna explained, gesturing helplessly. Protecting the oceans, fighting for conservation. It became my way of trying to make up for what I'd done. If I could save something big enough, protect something important enough, maybe it would balance out abandoning my own children. That's why you changed your name, Cairo realized, his quick mind making connections. Luna Rivers, it's like you created a whole new person. A person who didn't have to face what she'd done, Zayden added, showing the emotional intelligence that sometimes surprised even his father. Luna nodded, unable to speak for a moment. The sounds of the museum filtered distantly through the private room's doors. Children's laughter, the murmur of tour groups, the gentle splash of the aquarium tanks. Your father, Luna said finally, looking at Adrian, he was always the stronger one, better with you both, more natural at parenting. I felt unnecessary. You weren't unnecessary, the twins said in unison, their synchronized response making Luna flinch with its familiarity. You were our mother, Cairo continued. Our mother, Zayden corrected, surprising everyone, including himself. Adrian watched his sons, marveling at their capacity for understanding, even in the face of such complex emotions. They'd inherited that from Luna, he realized, the ability to see multiple sides of a situation, to seek understanding even when hurt. We're not saying everything will be perfect, Cairo said carefully, adjusting his glasses in a gesture that reminded Luna painfully of Adrian during their college days. But we have questions, Zayden added, and we deserve answers. Luna nodded, understanding that this was neither forgiveness nor rejection, but something in between, a chance to explain, to be heard, to possibly begin building something new from the ashes of what she'd abandoned. Perhaps, Nova suggested gently, this is a conversation that needs time to unfold. There's a lot to process for everyone. The twins exchanged one of their silent looks, then turned to their father. Adrian had been quietly watching the interaction, his own emotions carefully contained for his son's sake. Dad, they asked together, seeking his guidance as they had for the past decade. Adrian looked at his former wife, seeing both the woman he'd married and the stranger she'd become. Your aunt is right, he said finally. This isn't something we can resolve in one afternoon. But, he added, seeing the protest forming on the twins' faces, it's not something we should run from either. Running away doesn't solve anything, Luna said softly, the irony of her words not lost on anyone. I learned that the hard way. Outside, the fog began to thin slightly, allowing glimpses of the park beyond the windows. Inside, the family sat with their truths laid bare, each processing the reality that their lives had been interconnected all along, even when they thought they were separate. Phoenix's modified smartwatch beeped softly, reminding them that time was still moving forward, even though this afternoon felt suspended in space. The museum would be closing soon, forcing them to leave this neutral ground and face the reality of their situation in the world beyond. We have your number now, Cairo said practically, holding up his tablet. From the dating app. And you have ours, Zayden added, a hint of his usual mischief returning, since technically we're the ones who messaged you first. A ghost of a smile crossed Luna's face, recognizing in her sons the perfect blend of Adrian's practicality and her own determination. The path forward wasn't clear, but at least now there was a path, unexpected and unplanned, but real. As they prepared to leave the private room, each carrying the weight of revelations and possibilities, they were different from the people who had entered the museum that morning. The twins' simple plan to find their father happiness had instead unearthed their greatest mystery, and now they all faced the challenge of writing the next chapter of their story together. Chapter 10. Understanding. As the afternoon wore on, anger gave way to curiosity. The twins, their matchmaking plan in ruins, found themselves fascinated by this woman who shared their laugh, their love of terrible jokes, their passionate nature. After leaving the California Academy of Sciences, they had relocated to a quiet cafe nearby, neutral territory that wasn't laden with the weight of museum memories. "You really organized that marine protection rally last spring?" Zayden asked, leaning forward with interest. His initial anger had begun to soften in the face of discovering shared passions. "The one that got the city to ban single-use plastics?" Luna nodded, her fingers wrapped around a fresh cup of tea. "It took months of preparation, working with local businesses to find sustainable alternatives." She hesitated, then added softly, "I saw you both there, actually. In the crowd with your science club." Cairo's eyes widened behind his glasses. "That's why our proposal got fast-tracked through the Environmental Committee," he realized. "Our project about microplastic detection in the bay." Adrian watched the interaction with complex emotions playing across his face. He sat beside his sons, but gave them space to lead the conversation, understanding that they needed to process this. In their own way, Nova had returned to her apartment at River's insistence, though she remained on standby, monitoring the situation through concerned text messages. "Your project was brilliant," Luna said, her professional assessment mixing with maternal pride she hadn't earned the right to express. "The use of AI-driven drones for sample collection. That's graduate-level thinking." "Dad helped us with the programming," Zayden said quickly, loyalty making him emphasize their father's role. "He wrote the base code for the drone navigation system." Luna looked at Adrian, genuine admiration in her expression. "You always did find ways to blend technology with practical applications. I followed your company's work on sustainable tech solutions." "You followed a lot of things," Adrian observed, his voice carefully neutral, "from a safe distance." The twins exchanged glances, having one of their silent conversations that had helped them navigate difficult moments throughout their lives. Finally, Cairo spoke, his analytical mind seeking patterns in their shared history. "You were there for all our science fairs," he said, pulling up dates on his tablet. "Always in the back row. And the robotics competitions." He looked at his mother. "Why didn't you ever come forward?" Luna's composed facade cracked slightly. "I told myself I was protecting you, that suddenly appearing would disrupt the beautiful life you'd built, that it was better to support from afar than to risk causing more pain." She paused, acknowledging the flaws in her logic. "I was a coward." "Yes," Zayden said bluntly, but without the anger from earlier. "You were, but you're here now, because we accidentally found you through a dating app." He couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it, and after a moment, his brother joined in. Their laughter, so similar to Luna's own, filled the cafe with a moment of lightness. Adrian found himself studying his sons' faces, seeing echoes of their mother that he'd tried to ignore over the years. Cairo's thoughtful frown when solving problems, Zayden's expressive hands when excited about an idea. "Phoenix's algorithm matched us at 94% compatibility," Luna mused, still amazed by the technological twist of fate. "I suppose some connections can't be erased even with new names and new identities." "The algorithm recognized what we couldn't see," Cairo said, his scientific mind working through the puzzle. All those shared interests and habits, they weren't coincidences. They were genetic and learned behaviors we inherited before. He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence, but Luna completed it for him. Before I left, you can say it. We need to be honest about what happened if we're going to try to find a way forward. Is that what we're doing? Zayden asked, his usual confidence giving way to vulnerability. Finding a way forward? Adrian leaned forward, his protective instincts warring with his desire to help his sons navigate this complex situation. That depends on what you boys want. This isn't about what's convenient for the adults in the room. This is about what feels right for you. The twins shared another look, years of unspoken communication, allowing them to reach a consensus without words. We want to understand, Cairo said finally. Not just why you left, but who you are now, the work you do, the person you've become. But slowly, Zayden added firmly, we're not ready for everything all at once. Luna nodded, hope and gratitude warring with the guilt that had been her constant companion for a decade. I understand. We can take it at whatever pace you're comfortable with. I've lost the right to push for more than you're ready to give. You did, Adrian agreed, speaking up. But these boys have inherited your capacity for understanding, along with your terrible sense of humor. They're offering you a chance many people wouldn't. The cafe had begun to empty as evening approached, the fog outside growing thicker with the changing light. Through the windows they could see the Golden Gate Bridge appearing and disappearing in the mist, much like the truth that had been revealed and obscured throughout their lives. Maybe we could start with your environmental work, Cairo suggested practically. Since that's something we're all interested in, our science club is planning another marine conservation project. And Dad's company is developing new sustainable tech solutions, Zayden added, carefully watching both his parents' reactions. Maybe there's a way to combine everyone's expertise. Luna looked at Adrian, seeking his approval before responding. He gave a slight nod, acknowledging that this measured approach might be the best way forward. I'd like that, she said softly, to see your work, to understand your interests, not from the back row this time. But no pretending this fixes everything, Zayden stated firmly, his protective nature showing through. No acting like the past decade didn't happen. No pretending at all, Luna agreed, understanding that honesty would be crucial to whatever relationship they might build. Just getting to know each other, as we are now. Adrian watched his sons process this, marveling at their maturity in handling a situation that would challenge most adults. They had grown into remarkable young men, carrying the best parts of both their parents while developing their own unique strengths. We should head home, he said finally, noting the deepening evening outside. It's been an emotional day for everyone. The twins nodded, gathering their tablets and jackets. Before standing, Cairo pulled up his calendar app. The science club meets on Thursdays after school, he said carefully, if you wanted to see our current project. Not from the back row this time. Luna's eyes filled with tears. She quickly blinked away. I'd like that, she said softly, if you're sure. We're not sure about anything right now, Zayden answered honestly, but we're willing to try. As they prepared to leave the cafe, each carrying the weight of the day's revelations differently, they understood that this was just the beginning of a long and complex journey. The fog continued its advance through the city streets, but within its cool embrace, the first tentative steps toward understanding had been taken. The twins' simple plan to find their father happiness had led them down an unexpected path, but perhaps, in their own way, they had succeeded. not in the romantic way they'd imagined, but in opening a door that had been closed for far too long, allowing the possibility of a different kind of healing to begin. Chapter 11. Healing. Over the next few weeks, carefully orchestrated meetings allowed the twins to know their mother while protecting their hearts. Luna moved carefully, aware that she had to earn every moment of trust, every shared smile, every small confidence offered by her sons. The first real meeting took place at the twins' school science club presentation. Luna sat in the second row this time, not hiding in the back, but not presuming to take a front-row seat reserved for immediate family. Adrian noticed her arrival, but kept his focus on the boys, who were presenting their latest findings on microplastic pollution in the San Francisco Bay. "Our drone mapping system," Cairo explained to the assembled audience, his confidence growing as he pointed to the holographic display Phoenix had helped them create, "uses AI to identify concentration patterns of microplastics in different water depths. By correlating this data with marine life migration patterns," Zayden continued, seamlessly picking up his brother's thread, "we can better understand the impact on local ecosystems." Luna felt tears threatening as she watched them. Their passion for environmental protection mirrored her own, yet they developed it independently, following their own path to similar conclusions. Adrian had encouraged their interests without ever mentioning their mother's work in the field, allowing them to find their own way. After the presentation, the twins approached her somewhat hesitantly. "What did you think?" Cairo asked, adjusting his glasses in a gesture that reminded her painfully of Adrian during their college days. "It was brilliant," Luna replied honestly, careful to maintain professional distance while acknowledging their achievement. "Your use of machine learning algorithms to process the data is incredibly innovative." "Dad helped with that part," Zayden added quickly, still protective of their father's role in their lives. "He's been teaching us advanced programming on weekends." Luna nodded, accepting the gentle reminder of all she'd missed. "Your father always had a gift for making complex technology accessible. I'm glad he's shared that with you both." The following week, they met at the Maritime Museum, where Luna's organization had sponsored an interactive exhibition about marine conservation. The twins had visited before, but this time was different. They had an inside perspective on the exhibit's creation. "This display about sustainable fishing practices," Luna explained, showing them behind-the-scenes aspects of the exhibition, was actually inspired by local fishermen's traditional knowledge. "We worked with the community to understand their methods." "That's like our project," Cairo realized, making connections. "We've been interviewing older fishermen about changes they've observed in the bay over decades." "The human element is crucial," Luna agreed, careful not to sound too teacherly. "Scientific data is essential, but local wisdom adds depth to our understanding." Adrian watched these interactions from a slight distance, Nova at his side. His sister had appointed herself guardian of these meetings, though her protective instincts had softened somewhat as she observed Luna's careful approach. "She's trying," Nova admitted reluctantly, watching Luna show the boys how to access the exhibition's hidden interactive features. "I have to give her that." "She is," Adrian agreed quietly. "But this isn't about her trying. It's about what's best for the boys." The twins, however, were gradually finding their own balance in this new reality. They began sharing their research notes with Luna, seeking her professional insight while maintaining emotional boundaries. She responded with carefully considered feedback, never presuming more familiarity than they offered. One afternoon at the Little Owl Cafe, now reclaimed as neutral territory, Zayden brought up a challenge they'd encountered in their research. "The city won't grant us access to certain areas of the bay for our drone surveys," he explained, frustration evident in his voice. "They say we're too young to have proper permits." Luna listened thoughtfully, stirring her honey lavender tea. Have you considered partnering with an established research institution? My organization has standing agreements with several universities. Would that be... Cairo glanced at his father, seeking approval. Would that be something we could explore? Adrian nodded, understanding that this was about their scientific work, not about pushing emotional boundaries. If you boys are interested, it could be a valuable learning experience. And so a careful dance began. Professional collaboration provided a framework for building relationships, allowing them to connect over shared passions while respecting emotional boundaries. Luna attended their science club meetings as a professional mentor, sharing her expertise while never presuming the intimacy of motherhood she'd forfeited years ago. The twins found themselves navigating this new territory with surprising grace. They incorporated Luna's insights into their research while maintaining their close bond with their father. Adrian watched his sons grow more confident in handling this complex situation, proud of their maturity, yet protective of their hearts. One particularly meaningful moment came during a marine cleanup event organized by the boys' science club. Luna arrived early to help set up, wearing the event t-shirt designed by Zayden. She found herself working alongside Adrian to arrange equipment, their old efficiency in handling tasks together surprisingly intact. "They're remarkable boys," she said softly, watching the twins direct their classmates in proper safety protocols. "You've done an amazing job with them." "They did most of it themselves," Adrian replied, but his voice held less edge than before. "They have your determination and your heart for making things better." The cleanup event proved successful, with the science club collecting valuable data along with the trash they removed from the beach. The twins found themselves naturally including Luna in their excitement over their findings, their shared passion for environmental protection, creating bridges across the years of separation. "Look at these microfiber samples," Cairo called out, waving Luna over to their mobile analysis station. "The concentration patterns match our drone survey predictions exactly." "This could significantly strengthen your research findings," Luna observed, maintaining professional enthusiasm while her heart swelled with personal pride. Phoenix, who had been monitoring these interactions with his usual technological assistants, noted the increasing comfort level in their interactions. "The algorithm wasn't wrong," he told his sister. "It just found a different kind of match than we expected." Ember, watching the family dynamic evolve, agreed. Sometimes the heart knows what the code can't compute. As these carefully managed weeks passed, Luna proved her commitment through consistent presence and respect for boundaries. She never pushed for more than the twins offered, never presumed rights she'd surrendered, never tried to rush the delicate process of rebuilding trust. "We're not saying everything will be perfect," Zayden told her one afternoon as they reviewed data from their latest survey. "But we're willing to try," Cairo finished, his analytical mind finding patterns in their evolving relationship just as he did in their research data. Nova, observing from her self-appointed guardian position, gradually relaxed her vigilance. "They're finding their own way," she told River over dinner one evening. "It's not what any of us expected, but maybe that's okay." The fog continued its daily dance with the city, rolling in and out like the tide, much like the emotions that ebbed and flowed through this healing process. Some days brought easy conversations about scientific methods and environmental policy. Others carried the weight of unspoken questions and remembered absences. But through it all, the foundation laid by two 12-year-old boys who had simply wanted their father to find happiness again proved stronger than anyone expected. Their accidental matchmaking had led not to romance, but to something equally valuable: the chance for healing, understanding, and the possibility of building something new from the fragments of what was broken. Chapter 12. Full Circle 1. Month after the aquarium meeting, Golden late afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows of Sweet Memory's ice cream parlor, the twins' favorite spot since they were little. The vintage-style shop, with its chrome fixtures and holographic menu displays, had been the site of countless family celebrations. Today, it witnessed another kind of milestone, the first truly relaxed gathering of the Matthews family in their new reality. Zayden and Cairo sat in their usual booth, demolishing elaborate sundaes while their parents watched with matching expressions of amused affection. The familiar space held layers of memories, birthdays, science fair victories, ordinary afternoons that had become precious in retrospect. But today felt different, not weighed down by the past, but open to new possibilities. "Your marine sanctuary proposal passed the city council," Luna said, pride evident in her voice as she watched her sons celebrate with extra chocolate sauce. The youngest environmental advocates ever to achieve this level of policy change. "We had help," Cairo acknowledged, adjusting his glasses with chocolate-stained fingers. "Dad's technology made our data collection possible. And your legal expertise helped us navigate the permit process," Zayden added, surprising everyone with his easy acknowledgement of Luna's contribution. Adrian watched this interaction with wonder, seeing how his sons had grown, not just in height, but in emotional wisdom over these weeks. They'd found their own way to incorporate Luna into their lives, neither forgetting the past nor letting it dictate their future. "You know," Adrian said, watching his sons devouring their ice cream with the same enthusiasm they'd shown as toddlers, "your matchmaking skills aren't half bad. Just maybe next time do a little more background checking." The boys groaned as Luna laughed, the sound so similar to Cairo's that it made them all pause. In that moment of shared mirth, something shifted, not erasing the past, but perhaps beginning to heal it. "Next time," Zayden announced with a mischievous glint in his eye, "we're sticking to setting up Uncle Atlas with Aunt Nova's friend Sage." Nova, who had chosen that moment to stop by their table, nearly dropped her coffee. "Absolutely not," she declared, but her stern expression dissolved into affection as she ruffled her nephew's hair. "Though I have to admit, your first attempt led somewhere important, even if it wasn't where you planned." The twins shared one of their silent conversations, then turned to face their mother. "We've been thinking," Cairo began carefully. "About the future," Zayden continued, "about how stories don't always end the way you expect." Luna set down her spoon, giving them her full attention. She'd learned over these weeks to treasure these moments when her sons chose to share their thoughts with her. "Sometimes," Cairo said, his analytical mind finding patterns in their family's journey, "the best endings aren't the ones you plan for, but the ones that bring healing in unexpected ways," Zayden finished, reaching for his brother's hand under the table. Adrian watched his sons with pride, seeing how they'd grown through this challenge. They'd maintained their close bond while creating space for new connections, showing wisdom beyond their years. The Marine Science program at Berkeley is offering a summer workshop for middle school students, Luna mentioned carefully. "I'm one of the instructors, if you're interested." The twins exchanged glances, having already discussed this possibility. "We'd like that," they said in unison, then laughed at their synchronized response. "As long as Dad helps with the programming modules," Cairo added quickly. "And Aunt Nova can come to the presentations," Zayden specified. Luna nodded, understanding and accepting these conditions. She had learned that love sometimes means accepting a different role than the one you originally imagined. The late afternoon sun painted everything in warm gold, catching the vintage ice cream parlor's chrome fixtures and creating tiny rainbows that danced across their table. Outside, fog began its evening advance across the city, but inside this moment everything was clear. Their family had changed shape, growing to include new understanding and old truths. The pain of the past hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into something that could nurture growth rather than prevent it. Like the native plants on the California Academy of Sciences living roof, they had found ways to thrive in challenging conditions. Phoenix and Ember, watching from the counter where they pretended to study the ice cream menu, shared satisfied smiles. The algorithm wasn't wrong, Phoenix mused. It just found a different kind of match than we expected. Sometimes the heart knows what code can't compute, Ember replied, wise beyond her years. As the family finished their ice cream and prepared to leave, Zayden and Cairo led the way out, already discussing their next environmental project. Their parents followed, maintaining the careful distance that had become comfortable. Nova watched them go, then texted River, "They're going to be okay, all of them." The fog continued its advance across San Francisco, wrapping the city in its mysterious embrace. But within its cool mist, a family had found its way not to the fairy tale ending two young matchmakers had planned, but to something more valuable. The truth that love can take many forms, that healing comes in its own time, and that sometimes the longest way home is the right one. The twins' dating app scheme hadn't led to romance, but it had opened doors they never knew were closed, allowing light into rooms that had been dark for too long. Their father had found not new love, but renewal of family bonds. Their mother had found not a second chance at her old life, but an opportunity to build something new and honest. And two 12-year-old boys had discovered that while they couldn't rewrite the past, they could help shape a future where their family's story continued, in ways they never expected, but now couldn't imagine differently. As they walked home through the fog-wrapped streets, Cairo and Zayden flanked by both parents, their footsteps fell into a natural rhythm. They were not the family they had been, nor the one the twins had tried to create with their matchmaking scheme. They were something new, a family rebuilt on foundations of truth, understanding, and the kind of love that grows stronger for having been tested. Subscribe if you liked.